Today is our 8th Sunday, continuing our look at the Great Peacemakers, true stories from around the world. The 7th Sunday addressed male leaders who advocated for valuing all life. This Sunday, we will hear about Astrid Lindgren and Jane Goodall. They are two female leaders who advocated for valuing all life instead of just human life. You will hear many echoes of our 7th principle, respect for the interdependent web of all of existence of which we are a part. Much of the dialogue is taken directly from the book. Astrid Lindgren's heroine, Pippi Longstocking, made her one of the most popular children's authors of all time. Surprisingly, few people outside of her home country of Sweden know that Lindgren was a heroine in her own right. This best-selling author, who sold more than 130 million books in over 60 languages, used her superb storytelling skills and sense of fairness and fun to be an influential voice for the voiceless, children and animals. Astrid Eriksson was born in 1907 to parents who worked a family farm near Vimmerby, Sweden. Her young life was a wondrous adventure. Playing in the barnyard, she delighted in discovering the feel of a calf's tongue against her skin, the smell of baby rabbits cuddled together, and the sound of milk streaming into a pail, and the gentleness of newly hatched chicks cradled in her hands. These experiences gave Lindgren a compassion for animals that would stay with her for the rest of her life. After discovering her love of stories, when a farmhand's daughter read her a fairy tale, Lindgren began reading, reenacting, and writing stories. She did this so well that her classmates were certain that she would one day become an author. To the delight of millions of children who have read her books, this prediction came true. But first, Lindgren's happy childhood would come to an end. One spring, Lindgren realized that she was too old to play so-called children's games anymore, and her buoyant spirit sank. Over time, her sadness became rebellion, and she cut her hair short, became a flapper, and by the age 19 was pregnant, single, and not willing to marry the child's father. Ostracized in her hometown, Lindgren moved to Stockholm, took a job as a secretary, and planned to raise her child on her own. Unfortunately, after her son Lars was born, Lindgren was unable to support him on her meager salary and had to give him up to foster parents. 5 years later, she married Sture Lindgren, a businessman, and was able to bring Lars back home. After the Lindgren's daughter, Corinne, was born, Lindgren, who believed that children needed a parent at home, quit her job and became a full-time homemaker. Once when Corinne was sick at home, she asked her mother to tell her a story about an imaginary girl she called Pippi Longstocking. Pippi's unusual name led Lindgren to create a colorful character with bright red hair and 2 braids protruding straight out from either side of her head. A free spirit, Pippi lived alone with a horse and a monkey, questioned authority, and was so strong she could lift her horse above her head. Corinne loved Pippi and continually begged Lindgren for more tales about her. In time, Lindgren wrote the stories down and then sent them to a publisher. To her surprise, a revised version of her manuscript was published. For the next 3 decades, Lindgren wrote at least one book every year, saw her stories turned into films, and became one of Sweden's most beloved celebrities. In Lindgren's stories, freedom, fairness, and fun abound and problems are solved through cleverness, not violence. Pippi, quote, Pippi was power, but she never misuses that power, which I think is the most splendid thing and the most difficult, unquote. Like Pippi, Lindgren strongly opposed the abuse of power and was not afraid to say so. For example, when awarded the German book dealer's Peace Prize, in her acceptance speech, she told a poignant story. A mother who never hit her son one day decided he had misbehaved so badly that he deserved a spanking, the first of his life. She told him to go outside and find a switch from a tree for her to use on him. The boy was gone a long time, and when he returned, he was crying. He said to her, "Mama, I couldn't find a switch, but here's a rock. You can throw it at me." Suddenly, the mother saw her son's perspective, that if she really wanted to hurt him, she might as well do it with a rock. Tears flowed down her face as she embraced her son and purposefully set the rock on a shelf as a constant reminder to herself, never violence. Lindgren believed that although child rearing sometimes requires firmness, it never requires violence. She said, quote, "We see dictators, tyrants, oppressors, and torturers often had bad childhoods. Most were raised by a tyrannical father or a guardian with a whip in hand. It is a joy for all of us if a child's attitude has been determined by love and not violence. For even the character of statesmen and politicians is formed before they are 5 years old. This is a horrifying fact, but true," unquote. Heeding this message, Sweden soon made it illegal for parents to hit their children. Besides violence against children, Lindgren also was forced on other social issues such as unfair taxation. As a best-selling author, Lindgren could have afforded a luxurious lifestyle. However, she consciously chose to live in the same humble apartment she had inhabited since 1940 and paid her taxes dutifully. One day, she received a tax bill for 102% of her income. The logic was that because she was self-employed, she owed the taxes of both employer and employee. Shocked, Lindgren published a satirical fairy tale in a large newspaper criticizing exorbitant taxes. The Minister of Finance countered with annoying remarks. She suggested that he take up her occupation, since he was horrible at arithmetic, but great at storytelling. The commotion sparked public discussion, bringing about tax cuts and ending the responsible party's 40-year reign. In time, Lindgren turned her attention to industrial factory farming, which she deemed heartless compared to the small-scale family farming she had experienced in her childhood. Believing that, quote, "those of us who care have to raise our voices for the animals who can't speak for themselves," unquote. She published newspaper articles decrying factory farming and pointed out how the vast majority of animals raised to be killed for food were subjected to severe confinement and brutal and inhumane treatment. They were no longer seen as cows, chickens, and pigs, but solely as production units. In one article, she imagined giving God a tour of a modern slaughterhouse. In the article, after seeing the deplorable conditions, God asked, "What kinds of blockheads are these to whom I have given dominion over the animals?" Lindgren replied, quote, "They're the same kinds of blockheads who keep laying hens crammed into cages that are too small and half-grown calves standing all day and night on hard slotted floors, and dairy cows chained in their cells. And not one of them, not a pig, nor a calf, nor a chicken, nor a cow, ever seeing your radiant sun or your fresh greenery as long as they live, unquote. The article continued with God slapping his forehead and asking, but is everyone in this country a blockhead? Lindgren assured him, quote, no, of course not. And most everyone knows that our animal husbandry is like nowadays. So there's a terrific debate raging about how to improve it, unquote. This debate led to Sweden's passing of its 1988 Animal Welfare Act, which Prime Minister Ingvar Carlsson announced as a birthday present for Lindgren. Although the law did not meet all of Lindgren's hopes, it was still, at that time, the world's most comprehensive animal welfare law ever passed. The law and its revision in 1998 mandated better protection for pets and animals used for wool, skins, furs, scientific experiments, sporting events, exhibitions, and food. It banned packed housing conditions and the use of electrical prods. It required animals to be allowed to behave in ways natural to their species, gave animals access to pasture and soft bedding, and prohibited people who mistreated animals from keeping animals ever again. The law also benefited people because it improved animal husbandry practices and more humane living conditions. Swedish food became virtually free of salmonella and other diseases that can be transferred from animals to humans. Throughout her twilight years, Lindgren continued to speak up for animals and children. She established the Astrid Lindgren Foundation for Better Animal Protection. In 1995, the Stockholm Hospital Administration named the most modern children's hospital in the world after her. Furthermore, her work made such an impression on the Swedish people that 2 theme parks, Astrid Lindgren's World and Junabacken, were created in her honor. In 1997, Lindgren was named International Swede of the Year. Accepting this tribute with characteristic humor, Lindgren joked, quote, I'm an old person who's deaf and half blind and totally crazy. And now I'm Swede of the Year. We'd better not advertise this. They'll think all Swedes are like this, unquote. Lindgren's lifelong adventure came to a close in 2002, when at age 94, she passed away in her sleep. Approximately 100,000 mourners lined the streets of Stockholm as a horse-drawn carriage brought her white coffin to the cathedral where Swedish monarchs are crowned. Lindgren had once said, quote, if I have brightened up one single sad childhood, then I have at least accomplished something in my life, unquote. Indeed, she accomplished that and much more. Although her playful spirit and splendid storytelling ability, Astrid Lindgren brought joy to millions of people around the world and helped Sweden become a more humane place for children and animals, not to mention taxpayers. We will now see a short video followed by a few more famous quotes, and then we will be singing hymn 301, Touch the Earth, Reach the Sky.
Första gången Pippi nämndes överhuvudtaget, det var när jag var 7 år. Och var sjuk och låg till sängs. Och det blev långt och uttråkigt. Och jag begärde då att mamma skulle underhålla mig, i varje fall på kvällarna, genom att läsa eller berätta. En kväll när jag hade tjatat kanske ovanligt mycket, så sa hon till sist då lite uppgivet, men vad ska jag berätta då? Och då sa jag, berätta om Pippi Långstrump högg jag bara till med. Det var ju bara något som kom flygande. Och då så var det väl något med det namnet som gjorde att hon kunde hitta på lite till fast hon var trött. Och började berätta om den konstiga Pippi Långstrump. Och så fortsatte den kväll efter kväll. Och till sist blev det en bok. Och jag visste ju inte att hon skrev ner berättelserna. Jag fick ju boken på min 10-årsdag. Så jag identifierade mig nog mera med Tommy och Annika som var de som fick uppleva Pippi som en underbar lekkamrat. Och själva Pippi var nog allt för långt ifrån hurdan jag var som karaktär.